In this video I will explain you the story of Eric the Red, the man who colonized and named Greenland. There are two main sources for Eric the Red Saga and the Greenlander Saga, but he is also mentioned in other various sources. Around 965 AD, a man named Thorvald, who was Eric's father, must leave Norway because he has committed a murder and has been declared an outlaw. Therefore, he sails to Iceland, which was colonized by Northmen approximately 90 years earlier. When Thorvald arrives with his family, the best land for farming has already been taken and he has to settle in a less good area. But the son Eric was an ambitious man, and he after a relatively short time got married to the somewhat richer Chulhilde, and he therefore also got better land. But Eric had inherited his father's temper, because it wasn't long after Eric had moved in with Chulhilde that he got into a conflict and it ended up killing a man. The murder was triggered by an argument over a high seat, a special and prestigious seat in the house. Tingle, which is the local court, decides that Eric must be deported for 3 years for the murder, so he can now be killed freely in Iceland if he's there. So Eric decides to sail west. So this was just the beginning of Eric the Red's story. I will continue tomorrow, and part 3 will probably come Saturday. Thank you for listening. After Eric the Red was exiled for 3 years due to a murder, he decided to sail west. The reason he is sailing west is because he heard that there is something out there further west from Iceland. Approximately 100 years earlier, around 875, there is a man named Gunnbjörn who is on his way from Norway to Iceland, but due to a storm he goes off course and ends up on unknown land. But there was not much to come after, so Gunnbjörn sails as quickly as possible towards Iceland. So they knew in Iceland that there is something far out there to the west because of the story of Gunnbjörn. So Eric decides to sail west, and he ends up finding some excellent areas in southwest Greenland. And during the 3 years he was exiled, he explores the deep fjords. In the winter it was of course cold, but in summer it was actually very green and warm when he got far enough into the fjord. After 3 years have passed, he wants to attract people to the new country and sell the idea of a life in Greenland. In order to attract as many people as possible, he embellishes the story of the land he has found a little extra and calls it Greenland because it sounds more attractive. But Greenland is not a completely wrong name either, because it is really green and lush in the southwest in the summer. But Eric was fully aware of the spin effect the name had, and he persuaded 25 ships to take the journey to Greenland. 25 ships means 25 chiefs with their entourage. Part 3 tomorrow. The 25 ships set sail, but it was not 25 ships that arrived, because just like today, the waters near the southern tip of Greenland are very dangerous waters. There's often storms and they sail into a terrible hurricane, so some of the ships are forced to sail back to Iceland and others sink, so only 14 ships reach Greenland. So there may have been approximately 400 to 500 people in the first wave to Greenland. Each captain becomes chief of 14 to 15 fjords, but Eric becomes the absolute leader. He's also the one who distributes the land to the people to avoid conflicts arising over who should have what. Eric builds his own farm called Bratalid in what is called Eriksfjord, which is named after himself, of course, and it's located near today's Narsarsuaq airport. At the same time as all of this is happening, the new religion of Christianity pushes up through the northern Europe from the south. And this is to Eric's great displeasure, because Eric swore to the old gods. Eric's son, Leif Eriksson, or the one we know as Leif the Happy, entered the service of the Norwegian king Olav Tryggvason. Olav was a Christian, therefore Leif also becomes a Christian. We're out of time, guys, but tomorrow I will continue. And here you can enjoy a video of me getting wrecked by the wind on a mountain in Iceland. See you. Now I will finish Eric the Red's saga. This is the 4th and last part. Eric the Red's son Leif saves some shipwrecked people, which is why he is nicknamed Leif the Heavy. But when Leif returns to Greenland, he brings a priest home and then begins to spread Christianity, much to Eric's displeasure. Leif convinces his mother Chulhilde to convert, and she builds the first Christian church in Greenland, thus also the first church on the American continent. Because Eric does not want to convert to Christianity, she refuses to sleep with him as long as he's still a pagan.
Eric respects it, but is still very angry about it. But on the other hand, Eric is very happy that his son Leif is following in his footsteps as an adventurer and explorer. There are some Vikings in the past who have discovered some country, which is North America, and Leif goes out to investigate around the year 1000. He arrives at the new country, which he calls Vinland, which we don't know for sure where it is. Maybe it's New Brunswick in Canada, or maybe it's Newfoundland he finds. Leif says that in Vinland there are both trees, wine and grapes, and lovely vegetation. But let's head back to Greenland. If you think of it as very heroic, with blood-fused voyages of discovery and Eric the Red who despises Christianity, then the Northmen in Greenland are actually classic Vikings. They hunt, they fish, but mainly they are actually farmers who look after their precious farm animals. And of course, they are also traders. However, they are not very successful in growing grain, because you can't really do that in Greenland. The cold climate doesn't allow it. However, the Northmen practiced nomadic agriculture, that is agriculture based on cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, etc., which grazed outside in the summer and were in the stables in the winter. So the important thing was to have enough hay to feed the animals so they could survive the winter, and it was possible because there was plenty of grass in South Greenland. They also set up irrigated agriculture, where they make canals that can irrigate the fields so there is extra hay. For their most important food was the meat from the farm animals, and of course also milk, from which they can make cheese and various milk products. In addition, the wool from especially the sheep, from which they could make clothes, was also very important. In addition, they also replenished their daily larder with fish, poultry, seal, reindeer, and bear meat. And they probably also ate plenty of berries to get enough vitamins. However, there are still many goods that they still depend on, which cannot be obtained in Greenland. For example, lumber, which you have to use for fuel, and of course ships and boats, which they were very dependent on. And to get wood, they have to import it or use driftwood. But enough about life in Greenland. I could go on for a long time. Let's get back to Eric the Red. Eric the Red was the first generation of Northmen in Greenland, and he dies in 1003, as an old Christian critical man. Over time, Greenland unfortunately becomes more Christians, and the irony for the Christian critic Eric the Red is that several of his descendants become bishops.